You are my rock, you are my shield, you are my refuge, and you are my Lord. You're my foundation, you protect me. You're where I hide, and you're in control. Maybe you know who Jesus is. Maybe you know who the Lord of your life is. And maybe you define that differently than I do, and that's okay. But who are you? No, seriously, who are you, really? Let's talk about that for a little bit. My name is Steve Kidd. I'm just here to be able to share with you how amazing you are. Between the now almost 20 international best-selling books that I've written, they're all written, some of them aren't published yet. The tens of thousands of lives that I've reached, the millions that their lives have reached. Between all of those kind of things, that song is one of a couple of songs that I sing that really just centers me and brings me back to the focus of who am I? Now, many of you, like I have, find yourself really lost in the real answer for the question, who are you? Because the you that you've identified yourself as is lost. It's buried under all the shit that you've put on yourself. It's lost in the mess and the maze of everybody else's opinions. And no longer do you even really see you. It's still there. You see, that's the part that I didn't understand for so long. I wrote about it in one of my books, actually, even about the concept of the more than a decade that I lived what I call a zombie. You know, dead inside, but just not having the politeness to lay down in the grave. And you know why? Because in spite of how I defined myself, and in spite of all the stuff that I and the rest of the world had put on me, I wasn't dead. The me that is me was still inside, screaming sometimes, needing and having to have to come out. It was saying to me, who are you? Any of you that have ever listened to my radio show, you know what the first question Steve's always going to ask is, who are you and how do you show up in this world? Now, it's interesting because some people have answers to that, and many people struggle with it. I did an interview with a gentleman today, and he's like, well, what exactly do you mean by that? And I clarified it for him because that might be verbiage. I don't think it was a matter that he didn't know who he was. It just was the way that I said it didn't ring through to something that he understood the question, and that's okay. But there's also others that I've asked, and they've given off a litany, a list of things that are their accomplishments, that is their resume. Well, this is what I do for work, and that's what I do for work, and I used to do that, or I graduated from here, and I've got this degree and that thing. And all of those are good. They're needed, they're necessary, they're important, they're awesome that you've done them. But are they you? Were you not you before you graduated? Was I not Steve Kidd before I put out my first book? Was I not Steve Kidd before I ever sang my first song? We talked about that on a Facebook Live a couple of weeks ago about my brother's perspective on that and how much I had to really see a whole different perspective on that, coming alive Steve moment that my other brother, the brother that's between me and my oldest, felt like was the end of his quote unquote music career. And I suppose you could say was the beginning of mine. And what I didn't know then that I know because I just talked to my brother about it was that he actually wanted to just sing a solo himself. My parents had put on him, because we were talking about the things that other people put on you, had put on him, oh, well, it has to be fair, so your brothers need to sing with you. And I stole the limelight. Not because I wanted to. I was little. I was just happy and exuberant and excited to get to sing about Jesus. Still kind of that way. That's why I started off this stream just singing to you. Some of you are like, oh, well, Steve, I don't know. There's even been people who've told me that they don't like my voice, and that's okay. There's been other people that have told me how amazing it is. And you know what? Those opinions don't matter. And the times when I tell myself it's not good enough, that doesn't matter either. Because it's just part of who I am. I've been singing my whole life. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and I was explaining to her that somewhere along the lines of that zombie period in my life, I stopped singing. That's why a lot of times I come on here and I sing to you. Even the times when I'm like, whoa, you really missed that note. Because when you've done it for a profession, you can fall into perfectionism rather than just rejoicing. But I remember back before then, back before all the judgment, back before I ever got in my own head, I just heard a note and I just threw my head back and sang it. I never had the thought of, that's too high for you. It's actually funny. I remember being a teen boy, and for those of you who can't tell in my voice, I have a higher voice. I was a first tenor. I suppose I'd probably define myself as a second tenor now. Maybe. I think I'm still at heart a first tenor. But as a teen boy, I was waiting for that whole concept of my voice to change. And it kind of never really has. It's deepened. There's some things that are different. There are nuances in it. There's depth of experience and compassion. There's probably still about an octave at the top of my range that I haven't learned to re-release into myself. Like how I put that. It's not that it's not there. It's just a matter that I need to pull those blocks out. But I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to sing that way, and so I just always did. I remember one time before I worked on one of the albums that my lead guitar player Ron and I were working on, that like all the other albums we made never went anywhere. And unfortunately, I talked to Linda, his wife, after he passed. It was among the other victims of all of the things that the end of Ron's life brought in the chaos of it. And I'm sad that those things aren't there. But I remember the day, that week that I was there at Ron's house and we were cutting that album and singing those songs. And I remember before that practicing for it. And I was singing soprano to Handel's Messiah to work on those high notes. Why? Because I didn't know I wasn't supposed to. Later on, people asked me, why do you sing so high? How come you're not singing tenor? You're the guy. The girls are supposed to sing soprano and alto, and you're supposed to sing tenor. Now, you could be a first tenor, which means that you may be singing notes that are higher than the alto. Some of you are like, what is this, music class? But, you're not supposed to be singing those notes you're singing. The sopranos are supposed to be singing those notes. Why are you singing them? It's like, I don't know, because I like them. Because I like the way it felt when it comes out of my mouth. It really, truly feels like praising at the top of my voice when I just sing that note. I think I'm pretty good. I learned at least to be pretty good at blending with groups. I have Continentals to thank for that. They taught so well how to be able to hear the people next to you and sing your part. We used to actually be bent over into the microphone, and so we were on a 3-tier riser, which meant that I was the one guy on the top, and so I was bent over into the mic because we all bent into the microphone, much like I just bent into my microphone that's right here, and so what that ended up meaning is being on the top level, I had to bend over the most. It also meant that I had two altos singing in my ears, and I still needed to sing the notes that I was supposed to be singing in that particular song. And it was a really great experience for me to learn how to be able to feel the sound, because you can actually feel right in here, and you can hear inside of your skull and inside of the little bones in your ear. You can actually feel timbre and pitch. And and again, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go into music class for you, but it was a great experience. And I learned how to be able to blend because I never knew how as a kid. I remember so many times people talking about how, oh, yeah, Steve, we heard you. You were for sure the loudest voice. It wasn't that I was trying to be arrogant. There were a lot of years that I went through thinking of myself as arrogant because of that. But I realize now it wasn't an arrogance, not then. It was just joy, just exploding out of me, and I didn't know any better. And most of the music teachers preferred that there was at least one person that was singing versus all the other people that were either mumbling or just not even singing at all. And so I got away with it for a lot of years. I remember one of the churches I was at that I ended up being part of the worship team, but we were just visiting then. One of the ladies, and we were sitting towards the back. When you have kids, a lot of times you sit towards the back in case you need to sneak out to go take care of one of the kids, right? Even if there's a children's church, they've got the little monitor thingy that says, hey, your kid's raising a fuss, come get them, or whatever kind of things happens to small children. And I remember from the back of the audience, I don't know, the person never told me if they really, truly could hear me, probably, because I have a big mouth, or at least I did back then. But she came all the way from up front from the worship team. It was, the end of a service and we were singing and praising and stuff. She came and she said, I just felt led that I need to bring you up on stage and have you sing. I was really shocked. It was really exciting. And of course, because especially then, that was just my jam. I was just like, oh, I just can't wait. Put a microphone in front of me. I gotta sing. I was desperate for it. I was out of balance in it, okay? That I can say. I understand now that it wasn't so much ego as it was just a matter of I didn't understand how to have the other parts of my life and be good at them too, because all I wanted to do was sing. And yes, from that moment, from then on, I was part of that worship team. And that was really good. A lot of really cool things have grown from that, from the times of singing. And so I know at the core of me, before I went to college and studied music, which after a year and a half, I dropped out of that because it wasn't helping me. After being a professional DJ in radio, after being the lead singer in a Christian rock band, after all of those things that I did, I had to finally learn that the me that was me inside of it was just that little songbird. Didn't matter whether or not I was too good for karaoke or I was standing up in lights in front of tens or thousands or even tens of thousands. Back then, at the heart and the soul and the core of me, all I wanted to do was sing. I remember the first time that I remember of, at least, seeing a city park that had one of those amphitheaters. I'm talking like a small city park, in some obscure town in the middle of the United States that, the whole park itself probably couldn't seat 200 people. Not a big park, but a lot of those have amphitheaters, right? I remember the first time I saw one and having the dream of, oh, I just want to travel all around the country and just set up and just sing right there in that amphitheater. And that's all I want to do. And, of course, when you're young enough and you don't have bills, you don't have to worry about how do you pay your rent. You just dream like that. But so if who I am is, and I love my kids to death, they're so amazing. With all the things that I wish were different, I hope they all can someday, or already do know, that I love them and I admire them so much. But before I had children, did that make me less who I am? Before I had either of the two marriages that I've had. Was I not me? And when they failed, both of them, and I'm now divorced twice, does that mean I'm not me? Or is there something more? Is there something deeper? When I ask myself the question, yes, but who are you? And what are you going to do once you know who you are? When COVID hit, some of you will remember this because some of you have been following me through all of this. When COVID hit way back in March of 2020, some of you saw my Facebook Live January 1st, 2020. It was called Seeing 2020 in 2020, and I was talking about the exciting possibilities of the future of a whole new decade. And I still actually believe that to this day. I felt very strongly that there was coming a wave that by the middle of 2020, you either were riding the wave or, like a surfer, you had missed it. And not that there wouldn't be more waves coming, but for that particular wave, after July of 2020, there wouldn't be time. Now, you could go into a lot of things about, well, what does that mean, Steve? I don't know. Maybe it was as simple as God whispering in my ear that my divorce was going to be final June 28th, and that by July 1st, there would be a whole new wave of my life. Maybe it was God whispering in my ear and saying, I'm going to take you through some transitions. And you need to be ready for them, because the transition you're going to go through in July is going to present to you a level of happiness and of Steve that you've never felt before, or at least not since you were a very small child. And that's led to the waves that you've seen here on my Facebook, because I'm far too upfront with you, aren't I? And I love being that way. And you now see, as I break out of the box that others put it, but I also sat in there and enjoyed myself. And I begin to stretch and grow. And yes, be the wizard in your life. Because a wizard is never early. A wizard's never late. A wizard always appears precisely on time. That's what Gandalf told Frodo. That's what I'm here to tell you today. The wizard has arrived precisely on time in your life. And today, I'm asking you the poignant question, who are you, really? That you that was you from the small child dreaming with the amazingly wonderful dreams. What was the heart and soul and core of that? That was the you that was you. That child that went through all of the difficult things that you've been through and transitioned into an adult. And the world beat and battered and buffed and really tormented you in some ways. And yet you're still here. You see, you too can do like I did. And you can define yourself as a zombie and see yourself as dead and worthless and no longer worth anything. But guess what? It's not true, because you're still here. I know. I've even been there where you're like, ugh, I don't want to still be here. Let me go. I can't say, for a long time at least, that I've been suicidal. I went through those stages a long, long time ago. But I do know what it's like to be what I call suicidally vindictive, meaning I wish I could die so those people could understand just how bad their life will be without me. You ever felt that one? I'm not there right now, but I know what that feels like too. The point is, you're still here right now, today, no matter where on that spectrum, from total absolute blissful joy to suicidally vindictive or even downright suicidal. One of my closest, bestest friends in the whole world is struggling with a severe version of depression. And a lot of it, honestly, besides the extreme trauma, also has to do with I think some misdiagnoses and some really messed up medicine that is not helping but only making things worse. And I hope and I pray for her all the time because I want to see her be better because she's such an amazing light in the world. And some of you may be going through that too, where you don't feel like you can shine. My best friend Craig, he described the bipolar medicine that he's on, which helps him cope in the world, to be, part of polite society. Sometimes I miss the impolite society version of Craig, but I get it. I understand. He describes the transition as being like feeling like you're chewing through wool that you've been buried in. And you may be at that point right now too. But I want you to see two things. You are you. You still are. It doesn't matter whether you feel it. It doesn't change it a bit. You still are. And two, you're still here. With all the people that have already died today, that died yesterday, that died through COVID, I don't know about you, but I've lost a lot of really close people, including my own father, to COVID and during the time of COVID, whether it was COVID or not, I don't know. But you're still here, right now, today, making a difference, getting it done, being the you that is you, that only you can be. But how do you do that if you don't know who you are? If when I ask you the simple question of, who are you and how do you show up in the world? All you've got is a resume, your work experience, your family, how old you are, where you were born, all the places you've lived. But at the heart and soul and core of you, who are you? Just as I walked you through the whole journey to take you back around to the fact that from the beginning of all that everybody ever says about me, I've always just been a little songbird, a happy-go-lucky little Steve, always saw too much of the bright side of life. Ask one of my kids, ask Maya, she gets a kick out of it when it's not pointed at her, and then she hates me for it, but only just for a minute, and then we're good again. It can be really annoying when you're really, really needing to, feel something awfully and swim in it until you get all pruny, for somebody to see the bright side of things for you. And I don't do that to annoy people. It's just who I am. Because when you ask me, who are you? I'm happy. I'm a lark. I am the storm. I know it's been a confusing thing. And a lot of people have been like, oh, well, the storms are destructive and awful and evil. I challenge you to look at that picture again. It should be right here at the top of my Facebook profile. Look at it again. Is the lighthouse weathering the storm? Or is the lighthouse causing the storm? Is it a sign of the massive power that lighthouse with its light still shining is? In the midst of what looks like chaos, is it enduring the chaos? Or, and many of you won't get this, but some of you will, is it the powerful wizard inside of it creating monstrous, massive, magnificent, monumental momentum and power from all that they are? Not because they're intending to destroy anything. I don't think a hurricane born out of a natural phenomenon of the combination of the way the elements of the earth come together, I don't think it has a vindictive side to it where it's like, okay, I'm going to go across this particular island and I'm just going to rip it apart. It just is what it is. So are you. And when you embrace that power that is you and you learn how to use it so that you're not just destroying the world with the power that is you, but you're changing the world irrevocably because you are the storm that came through. Because for the people that you're meant to serve, you too are the wizard. And now's your time to show up precisely on time. To not be your resume, but to simply be you. Some of you are going to need some people to talk to. I do sessions with people to help them identify that. It's some deep work. And I challenge, there's one person out there right now that's ready. They're like, I thought I was amazing, but now that I've heard this, I need to know who I really am. We're going to do that. We're going to dig into it. And it's going to be awesome. And for the rest of you, I challenge you to just simply do this one little thing. Go to the mirror, look at yourself, smile. Say, hey, gorgeous, how are you? Did you know you're amazing? And then ask that beautiful, wonderful, precious person, who are you? No, who are you really? And then remind them again, because they're going to come with all kinds of trash. Oh no, you're a precious gem. You are exceedingly abundantly above all that you could ask or even think. You're thriving and truly free. You're amazing. Once again, you're a precious gem. Who are you, precious gem? Who are you? Be the storm. Be the wizard. Be the precious gem. Be exceedingly abundantly above all that you can ask or even think, so that you can live thriving and truly free. I really didn't expect to go for nearly a half an hour here talking to you, but I just love sharing with you guys. All the way going back to, as I started saying and didn't ever get into, the beginning of COVID, all I've really wanted to do is just come here and encourage you that you're amazing. No real hidden plan even, just simply to remind you, you always have been, you always are, and you always will be amazing, wonderful, a precious gem. Thanks for showing up in the world and being you. I'm so grateful for this moment that I got to be in your life. I hope until we're together again next time, you're happy, safe, warm, and loved, that you'll be the storm, the wizard, the precious gem that you are, that you'll live thriving and truly free in all that you do, exceedingly abundantly above all that you can ask or even think. Thanks for being here with me. Talk to you soon.